I kind of love that I'm probably going to be one of the only reviewers on this website that is not talking about Lil Uzi Vert versus The World 2 this week. Just to be honest, I listened to it, but I just felt like it wasn't really all that worth reviewing. It's there, it exists, there's some highs, but it's just not all that special to me, and it doesn't add all that much to Eternal Take. Whereas this was an album that I had been thinking of reviewing for weeks now, so let's do it. Niall Horan is back with his second studio album, Heartbreak Weather. Niall Horan, you probably know him, you probably might like him. Formerly of One Direction, he has gone off to do his own music as the rest of the band members have, even though he hasn't had the same chart success as, say, Harry or Zayn or even Liam for that matter. Niall has carved out his own lane and he's had success in it. I would know because in 2017 I reviewed his debut album Flicker, which did land at #1 on the Billboard 200, and it was a record that I actually liked. I had enjoyed these singles from it, This Town and Slow Hands, but I felt like the high points on the album came from tracks like Since We're Alone and You and Me, and those were tracks that I came back to very often and still continue to come back to very often. I think they're pretty beautiful. With this record, I didn't really listen to the singles before its release, but given that I did enjoy his first album, I was excited to see where we would go from here. And at 14 tracks and 46 minutes, it is pretty close in length to the last album, and luckily it's about as good, if not a little bit better. Where Niall's first album was mostly a blend of folk pop leaning songs, this one seems to push itself, at least in some ways, away from the folk sounds. It's still poppy, sure, but the production feels a bit more grand and large scale compared to a lot of what was on his debut album. You can hear it right away from the opening track, which is also the title track, a song that has a very grandiose and somewhat bombastic instrumental that has a glossy and shiny feel to it. I honestly think it works the most because of Niall's vocals, because the song does have a few moments where it does feel a little too overproduced to me, and the hook is lacking in comparison to some of Niall's better choruses. And the track Bend the Rules is a slowed down song, but again, it feels like it differentiates itself well from the folk sounds of the last album, and it does have a nice and relaxed vibe to it, even though I think it burns just a little too slowly to be a real highlight. I was very pleased with the track Small Talk, which Niall described as a somewhat grungier Slow Hands, but I think this doesn't feel like a complete copy of it, at least. Honestly, even though I like Slow Hands, I think this one does kind of outdo it a little bit. The beat has more bounce to it, I love the groovy feel of the track, and Niall has so much charisma. I noticed at points that his vocals kind of sound a little bit raspy, which I think worked well for the confident vibe of the song. New Angel is a track that sees Niall trying his hand at some synth pop, and I think he handles it well, thanks in no small part to his ear for melody, allowing him to craft a pretty catchy hook. I worried that the track No Judgement would be spoiled by that one because they sound so similar and they're back to back on the album, but surprisingly it works. I think the acoustic guitar riffs fit with the somewhat tropical feel of the beat, and Niall crafts yet another earwormy hook with this one that I quite like. Niall doesn't totally ditch the sound of Flicker though, and the track Still, the closer to the album, is indicative of that. It's an acoustic song that feels reminiscent of some of the tracks from that album, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be crazy about it, but I thought Niall's vocals and the chorus made it a very catchy track that I quite enjoyed. I think a number of the highs on this album really work because of Niall's vocals, which are consistently lovely regardless of whether the instrumentals support him well or not. Black and White instrumentally is a track that definitely feels reminiscent of Niall's One Direction days, but what elevates the song is Niall's ear for melody and beautiful tone shining through, establishing him as a great presence on the track. I also thought the song Dear Patience was a particularly beautiful one. Niall kind of tells his own patience not to mess up his chances in a relationship, which lyrically is kind of interesting. And once again, his vocals are fantastic over an acoustic instrumental that has a bit of well-implemented swell to it. And when it comes to vocals though, I think a huge highlight of the album comes from the lead-off single Nice to Meet Ya, a track that I honestly would not have expected out of him, but it is a legitimate pop rock banger. Niall's vocals are confident, energetic, they fit up really nicely against the super energetic and catchy pianos, and Put a Little Love on Me is Niall's chance for a heartbreaking piano-led ballad, and vocally he again proves to be game here. I can't lie when I say the song definitely did make me feel a bit emotional, and I could feel the pain in his vocals on the song. It's definitely an excellent track and one of the easy high points of the album. Even some of the low points are actually pretty listenable tracks. Arms of a Stranger doesn't have the best chorus on the album, but I like the way it continues on with the themes of Put a Little Love on Me, and the instrumentals do fit with the emotional vibe of the song. Same goes for the track Everywhere. The only real issue I have with it is that it feels almost a bit too busy at points, to the point where the instrumental has moments of feeling overproduced. It's not bad at all though, and I think it's a track that could easily be a grower. Cross Your Mind is a minor lowlight it though, largely because it has a few moments where it feels a bit blatant in being Since We're Alone, the sequel. It still sounds nice, I just think it wears its influence on its sleeve a little bit too much. I also wasn't totally in love with the track San Francisco, a more country-leaning song that just feels a bit too standard and doesn't really hit as hard as some of the other tracks on the album. But overall, I can say that I was pretty impressed with this thing. Niall does take a few solid steps forward sonically here, and I think those steps shine bright and make for a pretty solid record. What really makes it shine though is his vocals. I had already liked them a lot on Flicker, but here I think he shows that his vocals are powerful, and even if there are some instrumentals that aren't amazing here, there's never a moment where it feels like he doesn't fit over them. He shows that he's game for whatever instrumental you throw at him, and his knack for catchy melodies and strong hooks definitely make for a successful album. I will say that it could have been a little bit more consistent, and while I wouldn't say that it ever hits any massive lows, there are some inconsistent stretches that make me wonder if it could have been cut down a track or two. But even so, while it may not go down as one of my favorite albums of the year, I did very much enjoy my time with it, and I'm sure I'll continue to get plenty out of it in repeat listens. My favorite tracks from this album were Black and White, Dear Patience, Small Talk, Nice to Meet Ya, Put a Little Love on Me, New Angel, No Judgment, and Still. And my least favorite tracks were Cross Your Mind and San Francisco. Overall, on my rating scale, I am definitely going to say that Niall Horan's Heartbreak Weather is going to get a good rating from me. Again, it won't be my album of the year, and I wish it was a little bit more consistent, but all in all, I think Niall did a very nice job with this, and I think it stands pretty nicely up against Flicker and might even surpass it by a little bit. But that's just my opinion on this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you get as much enjoyment out of it as I did, perhaps even more? Were you struggling to find what I found in this record? And how would you compare it to Flicker? Do you like it better than Flicker? Is it worse than Flicker? Are they about on the same level? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Let's keep this civil and have some fun. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, you know at this point that I won't beg for it, so don't worry. As for what's next week I am very excited because The Weeknd's new album finally drops, and I have been waiting so long for it, so I'm very excited. I'm definitely going to be reviewing it next week. Stay tuned for that. Until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.